Today, we're diving into one of the most fundamental processes of life itself, human reproduction. It's this incredibly complex and, let's be honest, fascinating journey that keeps our species going. And it all really starts with a question most of us have probably asked at some point.
You know the feeling, right? You're growing up, and all of a sudden your body starts doing all this new stuff. You're getting hair in new places, your voice might be changing, your whole shape is different. It can feel pretty confusing, maybe a little weird, but it's all part of a completely natural process. It's a signal that a massive biological shift is underway. And that shift has a name, and that's where we're going to start.
And that starting point is, you guessed it, puberty. This is really the official first step on the road to sexual maturity, where our bodies kick off this amazing process of getting ready for reproduction.
So what exactly is puberty? Well, think of it as the body's ultimate transition period, from childhood into adulthood, and it's marked by some seriously rapid changes. All those external things you notice, like new hair growth, are really just the tip of the iceberg. They're signs that your internal reproductive systems are firing up for the very first time.
Okay, so to really understand how reproduction works, we need to get familiar with the hardware. So let's start by unpacking the anatomy of the male reproductive system.
Let's take a look at the diagram here. You can see how all these different parts are designed to work together as one big system. We can see the major players, the testes, the vas deferens, the prostate gland. Let's break down what each of these actually does.
On a high level, this system really has three main jobs. First, it's a factory for producing the male germ cells, which we call sperm. Second, it produces the hormone testosterone. That's the chemical messenger that drives a lot of the changes during puberty. And finally, it has a very important delivery mission, getting that sperm to where it needs to go for fertilization.
Now, the really crucial thing about the testes is their location. See how they're housed in the scrotum outside the main body? There's a very good reason for that. It turns out that making sperm requires a temperature that's just a little bit lower than our normal body temperature. It's a really clever bit of biological design that's absolutely essential for sperm production.
So let's trace the journey of a single sperm cell. It all starts in the testes. From there, it travels through this long tube called the vas deferens. But it doesn't travel alone. Along the way, it gets a major boost from glands like the seminal vesicles and the prostate, which add a special fluid. And this fluid is super important. It provides nutrients and basically creates the perfect liquid medium to help the sperm travel more easily.
Okay, now let's switch gears and move on to the other half of this biological story. It's time to take a closer look at the female reproductive system.
Looking at this diagram, we can see the core components of the female system. You've got the ovaries, the fallopian tube, the uterus, and the vagina. And just like with the male system, every single one of these parts plays a specific, vital role in the whole process.
So, we're going to focus on these four key parts. The ovaries, which are responsible for producing the eggs. The oviducts, which you might know is the fallopian tubes. This is often where fertilization happens. The uterus, which is where an embryo develops. And the vagina.
The ovaries are the production center for the female germ cells, which are called eggs or ova. But get this, and this is a mind-blowing fact. A girl is actually born with all of the eggs she will ever have. Thousands of them, just waiting in an immature state. This means there's a finite supply. Then, starting at puberty, one of these eggs will typically mature and get released about once a month.
Okay, so we've looked at the anatomy of both systems. Now, let's see how they actually come together. This is where the incredible process of creating a new life truly begins to unfold.
So here's the sequence of events, step by step. First, an egg is released from an ovary. If intercourse happens, sperm travel up to meet it. If one single sperm manages to fuse with the egg, usually in the oviduct, that's fertilization. This new fertilized egg is now called a zygote. It starts dividing and developing as it makes its way to the uterus. Once it implants in the uterine wall, we call it an embryo. And from that point on, it gets all the nutrients it needs from the mother through a special organ called the placenta.
So that's the path to pregnancy. But of course, that doesn't happen every single month. So what happens to the egg and all the body's preparations if fertilization doesn't happen? Right, so there are two possible paths here. Every month, in anticipation of a potential pregnancy, the uterus prepares this thick, nutrient-rich lining. It's kind of like getting a room ready for a guest. If the egg is fertilized, that lining is the perfect place to nourish the growing embryo. But if fertilization doesn't happen, that unfertilized egg only survives for about a day. The body realizes that the special uterine lining isn't needed, so it breaks it down. That lining is then shed from the body, and this whole monthly cycle is what we call menstruation.
Understanding all this biology is a huge part of the picture, but it's not the whole story. The ability to reproduce also comes with a real need to understand our health and the responsibilities that are involved.
A really crucial part of reproductive health is being aware that the very intimate physical connection involved in reproduction can also be a pathway for transmitting diseases. We often call these sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs, and they can be caused by things like bacteria or viruses.
And since the sexual act can lead to pregnancy, and not everyone is ready or wants that, it's important to know about contraception. There are a bunch of different ways to approach this. You have mechanical barriers, like condoms, that physically block sperm from reaching the egg. There are hormonal methods, like pills, which work by preventing an egg from being released in the first place. Then you have things like IUDs, which are devices placed inside the uterus. And finally, there are surgical methods that permanently block the path for either the sperm or the egg.
So, we've just walked through the incredibly intricate biological mechanics of how a new human life can begin. But this amazing science doesn't just exist in a textbook. It raises some profound questions about our personal choices, our health, and our society. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. Now that we understand the how of reproduction, how do we navigate the responsibilities that come with it? Responsibilities to ourselves and to each other. That's a question that goes way beyond biology. Thanks for exploring it with me today.